SNP MP Stuart Hosey has said that all opposition parties need to unite to remove Boris Johnson, something which is being touted and rumoured to happen this week, which would be quite funny. Boris Johnson's giving a keynote speech at his party conference, and during that time a vote of no confidence is taking place, which is quite cheeky. Granted, it wouldn't be allowed to happen, the vote would have to happen in the evening, he would have to be present, and of course he would be present. But I think it quite funny that they're willing to go so far as to push for this, because they need to stop the threat of no-deal Brexit. But some of his other comments, which we'll get to soon, contradict that. This all comes after opposition leaders had met in Westminster to discuss the idea of a no-confidence vote against Boris Johnson. This is then to secure an extension, which is in and of itself an assumption that the EU will even grant it to begin with. It is believed that by doing this, it prevents Boris Johnson forcing no deal, which it doesn't. Based on the time frame and how long it would take to have a general election, you have so little time afterwards to install a government to then act immediately, that unless you're immediately planning now to then immediately pounce on it with whatever little time you have left, you're kind of screwed. The reason they lack confidence in the Prime Minister is not because they're playing party politics at all and being little bitches, never, but because of his refusal to say he will ask for an extension, something which is directly referenced in the Hillary Benn surrender bill, where if by mid-October he does not have a deal that can be voted on in Parliament, he must ask for it, instead responding with, "We will respect the law of the land," or "We will respect the law, letter of the law," whatever. A thorn in Stuart Hosey's side appears to be Joe Swinson of the illiberal Undemobox, who he wants to support Corbyn, as they then have a majority at time of recording to unseat Boris Johnson. But she won't, as she's not a fan of Corbyn. His policies are a bit too left-leaning for her. When I earlier said that Hosey wants to stop Brexit, he gave it away with a quote calling on Joe Swinson to get on board, where he said if Joe Swinson and the Liberal Democrats are actually serious about stopping Brexit, then they need to stop playing political games and get on board with everybody else. This quote outright implies he also wants to stop what was voted on. Now granted, he's SNP, so he's only thinking of Scotland's interests. And on the subject of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon is open to this and installing Corbyn as caretaker Prime Minister, where she said that we are all going to have to compromise, we are all going to have to swallow our pride and put up with something for a matter of days to allow that to happen and get on with it. The plan being, which then throws everything else into disarray, is that if a no-confidence vote happens, Corbyn immediately becomes caretaker Prime Minister as he holds a majority in Parliament, well, is the next biggest party, even if he is about to lose 100 seats at the next general election, as many believe, for him to then call a general election. He would be caretaker Prime Minister until the election happens. Although in truth, I think he won't. I don't think he'll call for a general election. I think once he's made Prime Minister, he will renege on it, which would be the funniest thing ever. All the opposition unite, and Jeremy Corbyn just goes, "Yeah, but no. Sorry, fam. In it." Swag. Now, there are a number of issues with agreeing a consensus and a deal with Corbyn at the head. They include that some want a second referendum, as in remain or leave. Some want a referendum on the deal and going forward, so they want more added to it with the option of remain, as in deal, deal, no deal, deal, hard Brexit, soft Brexit, and so on, basically. Some want revocation of Article 50. Some want to stay in the single market, customs union, common fisheries policy, common agricultural policy, and so on, basically cherry-picking parts of the EU that they want to remain a part of, to, and I quote their typical responses of, to protect jobs and interests, and secure workers' rights, because we apparently are too incompetent to do it ourselves. This, again, is all based on a big assumption, one that has been refuted many times, the assumption being they will get an extension. Macron has said no, Spain has said no, Germany has said no, as has Ireland. The fact you continue down this line, instead of simply getting on board and getting something done, is quite amusing, but it's unsurprising. You are becoming more and more like American party politics, where you vote on party lines only instead of accepting something that has happened, because your own interests are more important to you.